All right, welcome to this training. We're going to be talking about which business bank account to actually open. So after you've gone ahead and set up your legal entity, now after you have that kind of in the process, once all of that is set up, right, what you're going to do next is you're going to go ahead and set up your business bank account. So long as you are not option number one, right? So as long as you're not a sole prop with no business bank account, we talked about all these different options in a previous training. As long as you are not that, every single other option actually depends on a business bank account because you are going to be having some sort of funds coming into your business. Okay. So the reason why this is so important is because of the fact that once you start accepting money for your business activities, having a separate account is going to be massive. It's going to help you keep track of all of the money that is coming in and out, and you're going to have all sorts of expenses for running your business, right? And so it's going to be so much easier to keep those expenses separate from your personal expenses, right? So as you're doing business, you might go out and let's say buy a microphone or sign up for some software, or you might purchase like a notebook, or you might purchase a keyboard or some desk tools, or even your desk might be expensible for business purposes as well. And so if you don't actually have a separate business bank account, when the end of the year comes around and it comes time to do your accounting, it's going to be an absolute complete mess. You're going to have to spend like 3+ weeks in like isolation in a cave in order to actually be able to figure out like, hey, what in the world happened with your expenses? Like, hey, which one was a business expense? Which one was a personal expense? Like, you got to look back at all the bank statements. It's an absolute nightmare. How do we know it's an absolute nightmare? Because we ourselves made this mistake, because so many people in the community made this mistake. And we've said this many times before. This program that you're going through is just an amalgam of all of the mistakes and lessons and pro tips that us and the rest of the community has learned. And then all we do is we just come into these courses and actually just compile them. Okay. And so it's so much easier and so much more sensible to have things clean from the beginning, because even after just 6 months or a year, it would save you so much time if you just go ahead and do it properly from the start. And so that's the reason why having your business bank account is going to be so important. Now, the question you might have is, okay, well, which bank account do I actually open? Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about major banks and business checking. So we're going to talk to you about major banks and alternative banks. Okay, so pretty much every single major bank that is out there is going to allow you to be able to open up something called a business checking account. So whether that be Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Capital One, US Bank, most Canadian banks as well. But the issue though, and obviously these are all US banks as well, right? The issue though is that not all banks are created equal. Some are more annoying than others, right? Some of them have like outdated technology as if you're still living in the 1990s. Some of them don't let you be able to do things easily. And so from our experience of dealing with different bank accounts in the past, we have used Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Capital One, US Bank. We have used them. And what we have found out that a lot of them are not that great. But again, this is all preference. It all just depends on like, hey, it's up to you. We're just sharing with you our experience and what we have noticed inside of the community. So in the last couple of years, we've actually transferred all of our business and even our personal bank accounts to Chase. And so far we have had a great experience. Okay. So again, totally up to you. We're just sharing with you what we have seen inside of the community. And just because Chase has a great, business checking account, that does not mean that that is the decision for you. The reason is because you also have to look at, if you are going with the major banks route, then you're probably going to want to have an in-person branch to be able to go to. And that is one of the major advantages to the major banks, is that they are going to have locations. But if you live in a part of the country that doesn't have a Chase Bank near you, then that might be something that you need to very importantly take into consideration. Now, the only con and disadvantage of a lot of these major banks that do have in-person branches is that a lot of times they do have small maintenance fees or minimum balances that they will charge every single month, meaning that if you don't have a minimum balance of X amount of money in there, then all of a sudden they're going to charge you some sort of maintenance fee. Okay, so that does include Chase Bank. Unfortunately, a lot of these major banks do that. And so what you got to go ahead and do is you actually got to go ahead and look at like, okay, based off of their business checking, and these things all change all the time, it's like, cool, you got to have a $15 fee or a $0 fee as long as you have, let's say, $2,000 in your account or something like that, right? And so, yeah, sure, you can just go in and transfer $2,000 into your business checking account from your personal checking account, right? And you can do that from any bank. Let's say, for example, you want to have your business bank account at Chase and you use Wells Fargo for your personal account. Sure, you can transfer $2,000 from your Wells to your Chase and you can just leave it in there in order to avoid the monthly fee. but that's completely up to you. We're just going ahead and opening those doors for you. And then of course, in Canada, there are plenty of equivalents to the US major banks as well. And of course, all of this also applies to Canadian students to be able to make sure that you're mindful and keeping track of for all the things in Canada, as well as any other country in general as well. So that's going to be the major banks. Next up after that is that we have the alternative banks. Now, what are the alternative banks? In the last couple of years, there's quite a few alternative online banks that are kind of popping up to offer a lot of the same benefits as the major banks, but then provide an ease of service, right? So what they do is they actually allow you to be able to have no fees, no minimums, and obviously because they don't have a physical footprint, they don't have physical locations, they don't have to have these fees to be able to go ahead and upkeep all of those, right? Now, the only disadvantage for that is that you don't actually have somebody in person physical that you can go to. A lot of times, maybe ATMs aren't readily available either. Everything has to be done through the app. So again, we're just opening your eyes to understand what exists out there. And so that way you can understand that, cool, maybe I go with the major bank, maybe I go with an alternative bank. Completely up to you, depending on what suits your specific situation, right? So Novo, for example, that's again something that we've heard. We've never used Novo before, but this is just something that we've seen on the internet. We're like, you know what? Cool. Let's just offer it as like, hey, this is potentially something that you could explore. And then Novo has all of their kind of like, reasons why Novo is better than the traditional business bank accounts and all that kind of stuff. And really, quite frankly, if you just do a quick Google search, it's going to show you many of these options in both the US and Canada. If you just type in best online bank for business owners, right? Best online bank for Canadian business owners, it's going to go ahead and give you a whole bunch of different options. So if you decided to go with an alternative bank account instead of going with a traditional bank account like Chase or a Bank of America or something like that, then at that point, this is something that you can explore as well. So what your action step is going to be for this specific training is you have to make a decision on which bank you are going to go ahead and open a business bank account with, as long as you're in option 2 and option 3. If you're doing a sole prop with no business bank account, you're not going to be going ahead and transacting money. You're not actually going to be, just kind of dabbling, practice students, that kind of stuff. Then in that case, obviously you don't need a business bank account. But for everybody else, you are going to need a business bank account, and so you're going to have to decide which business bank account do you want to actually open up, because what's going to happen next is that in the next immediate training section, we are going to go ahead and go over the step-by-step of going ahead and opening up your business bank account. So it's going to be very important for you to understand which business bank account you want to open up and which company you're going to actually go ahead and deal with. Make sure you make that decision and then go ahead and move on to the next training section. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been this training section on which business bank account to open, kind of an introductory explanation of business bank accounts in general. Remember, success doesn't find you. You have to go out and get that success. And so you are chipping away at it. You're doing a phenomenal job. We will catch you in the next training section.